everyone. Thanks so much for joining me for this week's episode of When I Grew Up. On today's episode, it is my pleasure to welcome Ellie Kim. Hey, Ellie, how are you?
Hi, I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for being with me tonight.
No, thank you so much for the invitation.
No, it's my pleasure. So Ellie is in HR, human resources, and I'm excited to learn more about what she does because she's a human resources manager. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. I feel like I kind of know what human resources does, like hiring and like the process of even letting people go. I know you're involved, but honestly, that's kind of my limit because I've never worked for a company before. So I really have no clue. So, again, I'm excited to hear all about it. So, Ellie, with that being said, could you tell me more about what you do?
Absolutely. So I am currently an HR manager working for a large construction materials company based out of Dunwoody, Georgia. I've been with this company for about 4 years. And in my HR role, I'm more of a generalist in terms of supporting a team in regards to benefits, payroll, employee relations, performance management, organizational design and restructures, right? Like the whole gamut of the HR function.
Wow. So you really have to wear a lot of different hats, it sounds like, to kind of manage everybody and everything.
Yes, there's a lot of different areas that I do get to dabble in as a result of my job. For example, right now, a big piece would be just what do we do with COVID and, how we had to have everybody be remote. And now, do we want to bring people back? What does that look like? Right. So that's a large discussion we're having. And because there's such a key people element to it, right, I'm a part of those conversations.
Wow. So, yeah, can I ask you then, when COVID first hit and everyone started to realize that we needed to stay home and kind of lock down, what were some of the first steps for you and your team to make sure everything was going smoothly at your company?
Yeah, I mean, so two pieces. Fortunately for our company, we had technology in place that would allow employees to work remotely, even
Oh,
the technology we were
great.
using within our office. We had video conferencing set up for all of our
Mm,
employees. Most of our employees have equipment that they can use for their jobs. We just didn't have a formal remote work policy or plan,
I
but we
see.
were kind of doing it one off, and so it was one of those. You just had to make the decision, right? Like this is happening. The situation is not getting better. We need to make a decision. Just fortunate enough where it was our IT department that was really able to act quickly, right? So
Mm,
HR partners very closely with lots of different departments. And for this particular case, it was IT, and they truly made this happen. And
wow.
from an HR perspective, we just needed to figure out how do we continue to provide the support and do the work that we do from home? How do
Mm,
we do that? And
mm-hmm.
so it was a little clumsy at first, but we were, able to quickly adapt. But I think it was just because of how we were already set up, right? Like we were starting to do a lot of work online. We have places where files can be stored and work can be done together. That was the direction we were already moving in. COVID just kind of like pushed us in, right? All in.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Oh, wow. I mean, truly, I feel like that's such a blessing because I know a lot of companies were not ready for it. And I think a lot of, um, maybe like, I'm sorry, for lack of a better term, like maybe old school management, right? That has been
Right.
in been CEO or head of a company for such a long time, and they are part of a different generation that is happening now, where technology, working from home, all those things are almost like for this generation, Gen X or Gen Z, excuse me, is like very normal, You know what
Right.
I mean? So I know that the adaptation of that was extremely hard for some companies. Um,
Absolutely, absolutely.
yeah,
Which is why, our company did not have a policy in place, right? Because it
right,
was very much, right, it's the construction industry,
right,
very kind
right,
of old school, people who have kind of grown within the industry. So being at work, and a lot of our field locations being quarries where you have to work at on site, right? You can't work from home. The
right.
mentality was that, right, everybody just needed to be together to do work. And so we just had to quickly pivot and figure out, okay, well, can't do anything about those in the field, but those in the offices, what can we do? Where there is
Mm,
flexibility, how do we flex that?
wow, that's incredible. So were you just in charge of making sure your teams were able to work remotely, or were you kind of helping the entire company make this transition?
So fortunately for me, the group that I support in my role are the corporate functions. So all of my
Oh,
employees work, with a laptop that's been issued to them. So
I
that
see.
it definitely made it a whole lot easier for me versus some of my other colleagues where they've had to make split decisions in terms of what did they do with their office employees, what did they do with their field employees. So what we did for our corporate group was we kind of made an across the board decision just to say, we're just going to send people home. Please just work remotely for now. We don't know what's going to happen or, what it'll look like later on. We're figuring things out. So we just sent people home. That was the first thing that we did. Right. And then before we knew it, a year and a half had gone by. So
Yes.
now it's about, okay, well, what does, right? And this is what you're reading about and hearing about what does the future of work like
Look
now,
like, yes.
right? How have
Yes.
we changed? How do we move forward knowing that we were able to adapt? Do we keep that going? Do we find something in the middle? Do we
Mm,
go back to how things used to be, right? Like there are lots of places where companies can land. So it really is looking at what is the best decision for your company, for your population in terms of how people work. So we don't have an answer,
mhm, mhm.
right? We're still trying to understand the situation with COVID, but also be mindful of all the different situations that people are in, right? Whether you're
Right.
alone, you've got a whole family with you, you live in a big house, a small house,
Yes.
right? All of that. So
Yes.
lots of variables to take into consideration, which is why it's just not easy to say, okay, we're going to do this.
Right, right. Wow. I mean, and I feel like, your hand in all of that and whatever say or input that you put into is like so vital in that transition as well. And it's just a crazy time. And it's still crazy, I feel like, even though it's already been a year and a half, which is insane to think about. But
Yes.
all that to say, Ellie, could you kind of tell me what a typical day looks like for you then? I know you said that you kind of have your hands in different departments and things like that, but yeah, maybe kind of what a quote unquote normal day might look like.
Sure, absolutely. So, I mean, a lot of it is people interactions. So, um, typically for HR, we have seasons of work. So, right, it might be a season of where we're going through, a merit or a bonus process, or going through
Mm,
data review, or going through a compliance reporting. So, a typical day, might look different depending on what time of the year it may be. But on a slow, right, quote unquote, slow day, right, it would be setting up meetings with different leaders within the organization, as well as people managers, really talking about people, whether it's performance management, answering
mm,
emails, general inquiries from our employee population, reviewing data. That's always a key thing because metrics, it's something that companies are trying to focus on from an HR perspective. Um, Trying to identify, areas of improvement. I feel like that's done just on a regular basis in terms
mm.
of HR looking inward at our processes and what we do, as well as ensuring that we're providing the appropriate support outward to our employee population, as well as to all of our people leaders who are trying to lead their employees, provide the right guidance, coach and influence in the right ways. So it would be a lot of phone calls, meetings, we don't use Zoom at our company, but we use Teams. So lots of Teams meetings.
Mm-hmm.
I've gotten very accustomed to just being ready to
Right.
have the video on, right? Not everybody's favorite thing. So I always try to be understandable. If people are like, no, my video is not coming on
Yeah.
today. It's like, that's fine. Right, but lots of people interactions. So it could be
Mm.
anywhere from a manager wanting to talk about a performance issue that their employee is going through and needing some coaching and some guidance, talking with a leader in terms of structural changes that may be taking place within their team, people
Mm.
movement, manager changes, reviewing job descriptions. We're going through a lot of recruiting right now, as a lot of companies are. So lots of reviewing of job descriptions, having conversations with hiring managers, and then partnering very closely with our talent acquisition team. So a mix of this and that.
Yes.
And then I have one direct report currently on my team who supports me. And so then it's also providing guidance and coaching for my team members so that she's able to do her job
I'm sorry,
successfully.
what's a direct report?
So she reports to me. I am her manager.
Okay, got it, got it.
Yeah, so
Okay,
I have
okay.
one employee who
Okay.
reports directly to me.
Okay, I see.
Yes.
Um, you know how you were saying that a lot you're having a lot of meetings and meeting with people, and one of those meetings could be like um kind of like, a switch in staffing and things like that. And also you said like performance reviews. Like, so how does that them having those conversations with the HR manager, like how does that directly affect you? Like why is that your need to know kind of thing?
So for HR, a part of our role is to right, to help provide guidelines for processes. So for
I
example,
see.
right, if a manager's struggling with an employee because, they're not doing their job, or they're not coming to work, or they're always, whatever the case may be, in order for the manager to act appropriately, a lot of times managers will reach out to HR, and we always recommend it, right? To
Mhm,
talk
mhm,
about the situation so that
mhm.
whatever actions are taken are within legal guidelines, right? That we're taking
Mm,
appropriate action, that we're documenting the process,
mhm.
right? So it's really to ensure that the manager is taking next steps appropriately,
I
right? And
see.
that, they're not doing anything that's incorrect, not using language or verbiage to their employee that's inappropriate or unprofessional, but also that they are addressing the issue and using the right language with the employee during the actual meeting. So I mean, it really is just to provide coaching and guidance to the manager when it comes to conversations like
Wow, I guess so. I never thought about that.
that.
I mean, like you're almost kind of like I mean, yes, you coach, but like a counselor too, kind of like talking them through maybe what could be a stressful situation as well. But I feel like you providing those guidelines definitely would help facilitate the next steps. That's really something I never thought about.
Right. I mean, because if you think about it, it's the life cycle of being an employee, right? So I
Mm.
start with I start with this company, and I'm in my job, and I'm doing my job. And, as the person goes through their employment with the company, right, HR is kind of a part of that life cycle, right? We help bring them on board on day one. We're engaging with them throughout their employment with information
Mm.
about benefits, engagement, right now, mental health, right,
Yes.
and wellness. That's a key area of focus. And then as an employee changes jobs, they're engaging with HR in a process for what that job change looks like. And
Mm.
HR is a part of making sure that they're getting the right information so they can be successful in their new job, and
Mm.
making sure that if they change into a manager, then as a new manager, they're getting guidance on, well, what does that mean? And what are some new processes that you as a manager now need to be responsible for,
Right, right.
right? So that they can then become a good manager and provide the same kind of guidance as their team members develop and grow into different roles. So there's a key part that HR does play in terms of that employee life cycle, right? Moving from beginning and then, right, working with them if they do choose to either retire or, move on to another career opportunity, or, on the flip side where it's just not working out and, the employment relationship needs to be ended.
I see. Wow. I mean, definitely HR plays a key part then in every employee that works in the company. And I feel like from what you just explained too, I feel like it's good to have an advocate, for employees within the HR team. That's really cool.
Yeah, and I never knew, just kind of like what you were saying, I had no idea what human resources did. And
Yeah.
it's only in growing within this field, right, and learning and being in this job that I've learned, oh, these are all of the different ways that a human resources function
Mm.
impacts the company, or how a human resources function can support an employee,
Yes, yes.
during their employment.
Yes. So, if I can ask you, Ellie, like as far as like personality, your character, like what are there maybe some qualities about your own personality and how you go about doing things that maybe have been beneficial in the role of HR? Do you get what I'm asking you? Sorry.
Yeah. So, one is I do enjoy interacting with people, right? I
Okay.
think that's probably the best part about being in this kind of job, is just the different people that you get to meet and you get to speak with, as well as the level of influence that you can have.
Mm,
And then I think a key thing that helped me is, you have to be able to really draw the line and know what to say at the appropriate time, right? Like to
mm,
really be able to shut down your emotion at times if you need to objectively have a conversation with someone, right? If somebody's all, very emotional or very upset, right? Like it's important that if I'm the HR person and we're having that conversation, I'm going to do whatever I need to de-escalate the situation so that we can have a calm meeting, that we can objectively discuss what the issue is
right.
or what the problem is. And I feel like,
Mm,
I that part of me where I won't get, you know, um, caught up in the emotion of the
yes,
moment.
yes.
That's helped me, right? Because there are times where employees call me and they're upset about this or that, and
Sure.
you just want to be able to respond appropriately, but um, you don't want to get emotionally involved, right? Because you want to be able to help, right? And not
Right.
just add to the drama
Right,
of the
right.
situation, but be able to objectively listen, provide guidance, and let the person kind of calm down and speak. So I feel like that's helped as well. Being able to really kind of separate that and approach matters in a calm way. I feel like that's helped. I wish I could do that to all of the personal things that happen right in my life, right? Like if I'm in my car and somebody cuts in front of me, it's just one of those, why isn't that cool, calm me there?
Right. No, I
Um,
completely understand. But on the job, you are able to separate those things, which I think yeah, it would be so important. I just listening to that, I mean, I guess I don't really know, but I would not be okay probably in this job. I'm kind of a emotional, like empathetic person, so it would be hard for me to separate, but that's really, I feel like a quality that is, from what it sounds like, really important, especially when you're listening. And, I would imagine in any large company, there would be maybe uh, employees that get upset and um, they want to do the right thing. I mean, I think it's
mm.
interesting that they go to HR. Do you know what I mean? Like,
And it's all different, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
a piece of it also is also still showing empathy, but showing empathy in a way that for this situation at
right,
work, and depending on what the problem may be, like what's the right way to respond. Like for example, we're all human beings and we have personal lives outside of work, and sometimes those things come with us. So it could be anything, right? Like you
right.
had an argument with your significant other, or your child is sick, or there's something's happening, and now you've come to work and you now realize you've got this very difficult deadline you need to meet, and it could be overwhelming.
Mm,
whatever the situation is. And I think employees will either find solace in either a peer, or their manager, depending on that relationship. And then
sure.
sometimes employees will come to HR, and
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. It's like,
Yeah.
that's fine. If you need someone who you feel like, isn't in your circle of work, right? Who'll just listen, absolutely HR is available. But probably most of the time it's because of something that's happened at work,
I
right?
see.
Like,
I
oh,
see.
this employee spoke to me in such a manner, I don't know why, or my manager's being difficult, or there's an argument, or whatever the case may be. A
I
lot of
see.
times it's those types of work related things that people will come to me with, and then managers will come to say, I just need some guidance on how do I deal with this situation, right? Like, this is happening in my team, this is happening to an employee, or I need to address this issue. It's a very sensitive issue. What's the right way to approach this
Mhm.
without making anybody, feel offended by the way that I'm trying to interact?
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah. So all everything you're saying, I think, interacting with people would be um a good quality to have, I think, in HR from what you're saying. I is that like a would you I know there's different departments, but would you say that's kind of a big factor, like just kind of hearing people out, interacting with people and helping them through what are the processes that you've mentioned before?
Yes, I do. I think if you're not a people person, the
Mhm.
role that I have, and the role that I have, it's more of a generalist role.
Sure.
Then that may be challenging. Not to say it's not possible, right? But maybe challenging. But there are other specialties within human resources where there's not as much interaction, directly with an employee, where you may not be the one dealing with employee relations issues,
Okay.
or right, having to deal with um, conversations talking about performance, or potentially letting somebody go, or right, talking about jobs that may need to be eliminated, for whatever
Right,
reason,
right,
right?
right.
So yes, there are different areas within HR where there's less of that people interaction, but I think in general, it's a helpful quality to have,
Yeah, yeah.
to enjoy speaking with others, or have that mindset of wanting to help and provide guidance and support to others, right? Because at
Okay.
the end of the day, that's what our function is. We provide support to employees and to leaders so that we can thrive as a business.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I actually really love that. So could you tell me the maybe the different departments that are within HR? I'm sure it's different, right, everywhere, or is it around the same thing?
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's
Okay.
probably different everywhere, and there may be more groups in some companies, but right, typically you have your generalist roles, and right, your generalist can touch anything from doing orientations and focusing on onboarding, looking at employee engagement, and dealing
Mm,
with day-to-day inquiries, and being a part of data management,
mm,
and really that people side, right? Having those conversations with employees and with leaders. There's the benefit side, that I personally feel like it falls within the HR realm. I think
mm-hmm.
some companies are structured differently,
I
but
see.
benefits, right, would be a key part of human resources as well, and managing those plans, and training employees and educating
Mm,
employees about what those are. Then you have the HRIS team as well, and they're focused on the technology piece of HR. Some companies will have employee relations teams that are focused just on dealing with employee relations and investigations,
I see.
right? If there's a major complaint, or right, an allegation that's being made and it needs to be investigated, sometimes you have an employee relations department that will manage that. And then there's also a very close relationship with payroll and HR. Sometimes they're mixed together. Other times they're separate, but very close in partnering together to ensure that right, an employee's pay is being processed appropriately, right? So those are probably the bigger buckets of human resources. And then you have your reward and compensation as
Mm,
well, right? Focused on looking at market data and making sure that everybody's being paid equitably and that there's a process for how somebody
Mm.
gets paid more or how, how people get promoted. Mhm.
Oh, wow. Okay. So did you always, how long have you been in human resources?
So I have been in human resources for about 14 years now.
Okay, so have you always done this kind of managerial generalist role or
So no. So I
okay.
started off from the very bottom role. I started off as an administrative assistant for the HR function.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I mean, I started from the bottom. I remember during my interview, I knew very little, and unfortunately, I didn't do a whole lot of research into the HR function. I was doing more research on the company, and so I went in and asked a lot of questions, and that's when I learned more about what the function actually does. Like, what does
Mm.
HR do? How do they interact with, within the company? But I started as an admin assistant, filing, right? Just filing paperwork, creating folders, providing whatever support the team needed, and really kind of worked my way up and learned, as I
Mm.
grew in my career.
Wow. So have you had the opportunity to work in these different buckets that you had mentioned or kind of in the similar thread or
So I kind of, so from that administrative assistant role, I did stay more within that generalist realm. I never really
okay.
specialized, in one area or another. So um, what my career took me towards was I was in a corporate office, and then I moved on into a manufacturing environment and got to experience what HR looks like in that kind of work environment, and then back into a corporate environment. So that's been kind of the breadth of my experience in terms of human resource. It has been more in a generalist role, but I feel so close to the other areas because we're constantly working together, right? Like there's
Sure.
such a close partnership with all of the different functions. And one I forgot is talent acquisition. Talent acquisition
Oh,
also is
yes,
also a
yes.
key part to the human resources function as well.
Yeah, we actually just had a talent acquisitions person on um, this past week, so
Oh,
I
okay.
do know what that is.
Okay.
um, well, I am a little bit curious. At the start of your HR career, you kind of, and I'm sorry that I keep going back to this because I just think it's such a unique um, conversation to be a part of within a company. You were mentioning how you have to have a lot of hard conversations sometimes, or even very vulnerable conversations. Um, was that like difficult for you when you first started?
Yes. It was very awkward and
Oh.
uncomfortable, and like I felt awkward just having to ask these very personal questions at times,
Mm.
and as well as scared at times as to, oh my gosh, if I ask this question or if I start talking about this or if I confront this person about this issue,
Mhm.
what's going to happen,
Right,
like, are
right.
they going to get really angry and really mad? And right, so yes, it was very difficult at first, but I had
Mm.
a really good manager where
Mm.
she encouraged me in terms of everybody feels that way, right? Like nobody goes into their first awkward, first meeting and is like, boom, that was amazing. I did great. It was awesome, right? Talked about all this personal stuff,
Right,
and
right.
it was okay. That it's not like that, right? Like you only learn through practice and through experience,
Mm.
and that's really about trying to determine what's the best way to do this so that both parties walk away, or I am the employee, like we all walk away feeling like we've at least made a dent or accomplished something, or that
Mhm.
some truth
Mhm.
has come out,
Mhm.
whatever that may be. But yes, it was very awkward in the beginning, and
Yeah.
it took, I think, a lot of practice before I felt like, okay, I can do this.
Yeah, right, right. So but you do feel more comfortable now.
Absolutely,
Okay, okay.
absolutely. Right. Like it doesn't get easier, I would
Sure.
say, right? Especially, if it's a meeting where you need to let somebody go. It doesn't get easier, but you just know what needs to be said, what you need to do, what's important to catch, right? How to handle the emotion if it comes out. You just know how to respond, but
Mm,
it's still never, easy to do, because, those are just hard conversations. You're impacting someone's life, when
absolutely,
those
yeah.
things happen. So,
Yeah, man, it's tough. Yeah, I just wanted to hear a little bit more about like the beginning for you because I feel
oh
like
yeah.
it would be such an intimidating thing for myself. And yeah, I guess, if anyone's thinking about going into HR, I think I just wanted to hear kind of the humble beginnings for yourself and maybe some of the challenges that you went through. Um, Now, did you study this in college or?
Oh, no, no. I was a journalism major in college
Oh,
with a major in telecommunications. I
oh,
thought I
did you
was gonna
graduate
go
from
in.
Grady?
Yeah, I
I
did.
did
Woohoo,
too.
go Grady! I
Okay, okay.
did. I thought I was gonna do something media related at the time. I think by the time I
Oh.
got around to graduation, that emotion and those passions kind of dwindled down. So I really graduated not knowing what I wanted to do. Like I wasn't one of those kids that grew up like I am going to be a teacher. Like that is
Mm,
that is what I'm going to do. I kind of liked everything, and trying new things was always fun. um, but when I graduated from college, it was just one of those, what am I supposed to do now? So I
mhm,
think for about probably 4 years after graduation, I just did kind of this and that in terms of jobs, right? Like worked at a bank for a little bit, did did customer support over the phone a little bit, worked at a nonprofit a little bit, worked, at a front desk somewhere a little bit, just like odd things here and there.
mhm,
And
mhm,
this career really kind of found me, right? I happened to be
mm.
having a conversation with a friend. She was looking for a job as well. She had this great recruiter, and this recruiter, she wanted to refer to me. And I was like, I don't know what a recruiter does, but that's fine. Have her call me. And then the recruiter found this opportunity. And
Oh,
she
wow.
said, there's this job at this company, and it's in human resources. And I said, what's that? And then it was, she talked about the role, and you just have to make a decision, like, do you go for it or do you not?
Mm,
And at first I hesitated a lot, but at some point you have to dive in. Otherwise, I mean, how do you know?
sure, yeah, yeah.
And I'm so glad that I did, because I have been on, right, like continuing to grow in this field, since that day. So I feel very fortunate that that interaction happened with that recruiter and then with my friend, who
Yeah,
referred
yeah.
me. But yeah, no, I had no idea what I wanted to do when I grew up.
Yeah. Which is actually um a lot of people's stories on this podcast, it's just and I think it's so great. I think it's so encouraging for a lot of young people to hear like you still don't know. Even when you graduate college, you still don't know. And um if you reflect back on that time, like post college, were you like do you remember some of the emotion that you're going through? Just like I mean, because it's like a lot of uncertainty, and I think a lot of postgraduates from college kind of have this idea that they're supposed to like already have it together
Oh yeah.
and find a job and be able to just like take what they learned and go to the real world, but that's not the case. So like yeah, I mean, were you upset or were you just like let's just try everything out? What was your attitude during that
I
time?
mean, so it's a mix of emotions, when
Uh-huh.
you're kind of in this ambiguous, I'm not sure what direction to go in kind of
Mhm.
stage, right? Like I was thankful to have graduated from college. Um, and then it was, I was upset a little bit because, I saw my friends and others just so
Yes.
sure of what
Yes.
they wanted to do, right?
Mhm.
Like they've worked on this and they studied hard and they landed a job and they're moving forward. So
Mhm.
to see that, like, yeah, it makes you upset. Like, well, what happened with me? Like, why can't I get my act together? Or why couldn't I
Mhm.
figure it out?
Mhm.
And then, right, and then it goes into this, like, what's the purpose of my life? And I'm sure everybody's asked that question, right? Like, what's the purpose? And then you pray and you go, give me
Yes.
direction
Yes.
and guidance. But for me, like, while that's happening, it's like, well, I knew that I wasn't going to just not work either, right? Like, you just got to figure it out. Like,
Mhm.
somehow you got to figure out how to make money, so that from there you can move on to something else. And I think I was just really fortunate that there were just opportunities around me,
Yeah. Yeah.
that I was able to go to. And I hated the interview process. It was awful because you're already feeling like, I don't even know if this is what I want to do. Then you have to go interview and try to express this confidence that maybe isn't there 100%. And interviews are hard,
Mm.
anyway, right? Without a
Mhm.
lot of practice.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it was really challenging, at first. So I think by the time it got around to, this conversation with my friend, it was like, yeah, like, just like, let's go for this, right? because
Mm.
because that's how I got through, the other jobs. It was, do you want to try this? I think you'd be good at it. Okay. Hey, there's this opportunity, like, do you want to apply for this? Okay.
Right. Right.
When there wasn't anything, I went to one of those staffing agencies and said, I just need, even if it's like a 1 week assignment, what can I do? And I
Mm.
just did that, right? And then, so now I know, okay, this is what a temporary employee goes through,
Mhm.
when they're out looking for assignments. This is what the experience is like, or this is what the experience is like when you're not sure of what your path is supposed to be. And when
Mhm.
you're not
Mhm.
sure of that, what do?
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
kind of have to figure out your own path, but just not get, right, not get downtrodden by it so much, right?
Right.
Like, it's
Right.
okay to be upset. It's okay
Right.
to feel like, man, didn't make it, or not the success that I thought I would be, not out there directing movies in
Right.
Hollywood.
Is that what you wanted to do?
I mean, like, it was just one of those, like, maybe that's what I want to do.
Ah, okay,
Maybe I
okay.
want to, right, have my
Yeah. Yeah,
name
yeah.
come up in the credits somewhere.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it was just one of those, like, I wanted to be a part of that world during college, because I thought it was just so much fun. And I always enjoyed, being behind the camera, or doing editing work, when we had projects. It was great. And then you realize, wow, it's a really tough industry to
So
get
tough,
into,
yeah.
and you
Mhm.
make nothing.
Mhm.
Right, like, am I willing to do that? And like, in thinking through that process, it was like, well, maybe I don't. What do I do? So it was a
Mhm.
lot of just trying to figure out what's the direction I need to go to. And then I think for me, it wasn't this is what I love, this is my passion, I can't believe my passions found me. It was, I'm going to give this a try,
Mhm.
see what this is all about.
Mhm.
And in doing it, I've figured out that I have capabilities and skills and talents that work well with this job, and it's allowed me to excel. And I've just not been afraid, to take on new things, right? Like, don't say no. Like, you go, sure, I'll try that. Hey, there's this project or assignment. Do you want to be a part of it? Yeah, I'll do it. My
Mm.
company, my previous company, they relocated me to, Massachusetts. They say, hey, there's this facility, it's going through a lot of, hard times. We think you'd be good. Do you want to relocate and go and do that? I said,
Mm.
okay, bring it on. Okay, I'll do that. So I think taking on those challenges has helped me get to where I am today,
Wow, yeah.
definitely.
I mean, something that you just said kind of clicked in my head. And, for me, the whole purpose of the podcast and my heart behind it is to, I think, I, just kind of people maybe taking what they're good at or they're talented at or their skills, like you mentioned, and finding a career where they can excel and be, you know, joyful and happy and like, just really thrive in whatever career that might be. But as you were talking, I realized maybe you just don't know until you try it.
Absolutely.
you know? And I think for me, part of the podcast too is just eliminating that fear of the unknown, right? And so I think even you talking so deeply and transparently about what you do, I hope anyone listening can maybe even relate and maybe even consider this as a career path. Ellie, can I ask you, like, what do you like least about your job?
That's a great question. What do I like least about my job? Gosh, I mean, I mean, definitely as an HR professional, being a part of investigations that have to do with illegal activity, right? I mean, those
Mm-hmm.
are always tough because
Mm,
I mean it's serious topic. Lots of people are impacted. I mean, if I had to pick something, like, that's probably the one thing that I least like to do,
sure,
although
yeah.
I've done many of them because right, like, I feel like, managers have identified that I am able to conduct them in a neutral, non-biased manner, so I get pulled in a lot.
Wow.
But those are really hard to do, right? Because it takes extra effort, right, to keep that emotion behind, right? Like,
Mm-hmm,
if
mm-hmm,
something's happened, you
mm-hmm,
don't want to make judgment, right? Like,
mm-hmm,
you
mm-hmm.
want to conduct this investigation. So I think if I had to pick anything of within my career, within my job that I dislike the most, it would probably be doing those types of investigations, right? Whether it's, a harassment
Mm-hmm.
complaint, or discrimination, right? Like, those are always tough.
Yeah, I mean, I that sounds like just murky and I don't want to do it anymore, but I see. Yeah, that's understandable. Something that came to mind as you were talking was are there a lot of like women in HR, or is it like male heavy or
So human resources is very female heavy in
okay.
my point of view. I think most HR professionals, you'll find to be females, but I don't know if that may vary depending on the industry. But
Mm-hmm,
if I
mm-hmm.
look at the organization that I am a part of now, I mean, we've got a pretty good mix, but we do have, I believe, a larger percentage of female professionals that are in this function
Mm,
versus some of the other functional areas like finance or operations where it may be more male heavy.
I see. Okay. I
And
don't
and
know.
I
I
want to say that's probably just based on the history of, right, HR, where it was the personnel department, and it used to mainly be
mm,
female employees that worked in that function.
I see. I
Mhm.
see. Are there in your 14 years, have you noticed like are there a lot of Asian Americans working in the HR field?
So there are so probably not, not as much
Mm,
as I'd like to see. I've been fortunate enough where there have been other Asian HR professionals within my network that I've been able to communicate with, but not a whole lot, in terms of Asian Americans, or Asians, and I don't know if it's because HR is just not a a glamorous field that people go out seeking and searching for, um, right? I'm not sure, what the cause of that, might be, but no, I don't think I've seen a whole lot of diversity when it comes to the experiences that I've had.
Okay, well, I mean, I just wanted to ask because one, I was curious, and two, I as a Asian American woman myself, being in a managerial position and also having to work with males that are in leadership too, I feel like, there could be some issues that come up or conflict that comes up as far as, asking you to deal with like things like um, different allegations, right? Or investigations. And so that's why I was asking about it.
No,
um,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, definitely, like, from when you look at managers and people in leadership roles, it is still more, male dominant,
mhm,
right?
mhm.
Even within the HR function, like, if I think back to the different structures that I've been a part of,
Yeah.
right? The higher levels, they were occupied by more males than females,
Mm.
versus the lower level jobs were occupied more by my females than my males,
Mm.
which is an
So,
interesting dynamic. And I feel like there's a shift happening
yeah, I
right
do
now, right?
too.
With all the activity, I mean, even within
Yes.
my organization, there is a strong right push to, really focus on right inclusion and diversity. That's the hot topic
Absolutely,
everywhere.
yeah. So I mean, even as an HR person, like, do you find yourself really trying to um, set things like that in place for your company?
So yeah, I do. So right, but it's one of those. The challenge sometimes with that is it's one of those where you don't want to operate in a silo, and you don't want to operate where like right like we're doing this initiative right just for this
Yes.
population of people. And I think that's
Right.
sometimes what slows companies down, right? There may
Mm.
be pockets of area where a lot of activity is desired to take place,
Mm-hmm.
but companies want to look at inclusion and diversity, sometimes from a company-wide strategic perspective. And
Sure.
sometimes that slows down activities that take place. But it's really about, well, once you're there, how quickly do you start taking action,
Mm.
or how much do you allow your employees to have conversations, about what's going on? Do you acknowledge what's going on in society? Do you
Mm.
acknowledge the challenges that different people are facing? Are we being transparent about our own issues and how we may recruit or how we may promote? How do we improve those things to make sure that we are talking about it without just delaying it until there's this large strategy taking place, right?
Right, right. So even just, I mean, now that those conversations, it seems as though are happening in a lot of places. I think it's so great.
Yes,
Um,
no, fully agree, yeah.
yeah. Okay, so I asked you what you like least, but what do you like the most about your job?
So I love this question, and I get this a lot when I interview candidates. They all
Uh-huh.
they all want to know, like, what do you like the most about your job? And I have been very fortunate that I've just had really awesome HR team members around me, right? Because I feel like
Mm.
that's really critical. As an HR professional, you're getting involved in a lot of different things, and sometimes they can be very tough. So to have a really good support team um, can either make or break you sometimes, depending on what you're experiencing or what you're going through. So what I've always loved the most is just the HR people that I've been able to get to know, and the things that I've learned from them, and the way that I feel like I have also contributed to them, hopefully in a positive way, right, to their career and to their learning.
Yeah.
um, I've just been really fortunate to have good managers, good peers, people that I can trust and really go to if, right, like, I've got this situation, I'm not sure how to handle it, please help.
Yeah.
And they're available to do that. So that's what I've loved the most. Because
Mm.
for me, I feel like a job a job is a job, depending
Mm-hmm.
on what your perspective of it is, right? Like, the saying, right? Like, you don't what is it, you don't live to work, right? Like, you work to live.
Yeah.
So I think, like, a job is a job, so I can go find another company and do HR and probably do the same kind of work, but the difference is going to be the people that I'm working together with, and the
Wow. Yeah.
support team that I have. Like, that's what makes the difference, right?
Mm-hmm.
You'll hear that people don't leave companies, people leave, either the manager, or their team. They're leaving people because they,
Right.
like, that becomes difficult. So it's really, I think, a blessing, when you find a group of people that, you truly enjoy working together with.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's really a treasure. I feel like, looking forward to the people you're going to see every single day is so special. That's awesome. That's really awesome. Well, before we end our time together tonight, Ellie, just a few more questions for you. Um, is there any like further education that you had to do as an HR manager to be in the position you are in today?
So there are so my right degree is not in human resources,
Mm-hmm.
and I think for me it helped that I kind of grew from the bottom into my career. But for an individual who wants to be an HR professional and continue to grow, um, you know, what's what may be beneficial are some of the certifications that are available for human resources, whatever organization it may be that you're looking at, because that just kind of helps you with learning in terms of the foundation of human resources, the different laws that apply, the different policies
Okay.
and practices that are applicable. So it helps set a good foundation. So it's always encouraged, right? If you want to continue to grow as an HR professional, definitely look at, what are some of the certifications out there that are available that
Mm.
might be applicable. And then there are different levels, for that as well. Um, I know a lot of our jobs are posted saying that human resources management degree, right, or focus of study is a plus or is required. I personally would say that I don't think it is absolutely necessary. I feel like those skills can be learned as you grow in your job. If you give yourself the opportunity to learn that, right? If you're
Mm.
curious and you ask and you kind of dive in when opportunities are available and you take those chances, I feel like you can learn that. So you don't have to necessarily focus on human resources at school to go into human resources. I feel like you can make a career change at any point in time if you have the desire to do so, right? I think it's just about being curious
Right.
and wanting to explore, to figure out, is this the right job for you?
I mean, yeah, I think that speaks volumes about just to everybody, whether it's HR or anything else, like just being teachable and open to learning and growing is so important, right? In anything that we do. Well, I kind of always end our conversations with my guests with a question of on advice. Do you have any advice for somebody that maybe is thinking about going into HR, or it doesn't have to be that kind of advice. It could be just life advice, anything at all.
I would say that if you're not sure of what you want to do, with your life, right? If you're just not sure, be curious. Be
Mm,
curious.
yes.
Ask questions. Meet people. Learn what other people are doing, right? Like the more exposure you can get to the possibilities that are out there, and there are new jobs and new careers being created all the time,
Hmm.
right? Be curious and go out there seeking information so that it'll help you, right, gather information to, make a decision. But
Mm,
know that sometimes that decision can only get made, once you've dived in, right? Then you'll
yeah.
know this is great or no, this is definitely not me. So I think that's one thing that I would always, that I would just encourage, right? Like be curious, go explore, try things if you're not sure, and don't get down on yourself, right? Like there's something out there.
Mm,
But know that you just got to keep trying, and meeting people. Don't do it on your own. Like to have a good support system. Like I have great friends who constantly encourage me and push me and make me want to do better, and be a better person. So I would say, like, don't go through that journey alone. Have people who will be there to support you. I feel like that's really, really important. If you're trying to figure out, where to go in life, and that no, you could be 50 and make a career change then, right? Like nothing's
yes.
impossible.
Yes. I love that. I mean, I think actually you're not the first person to say something along those lines on the podcast, but I think it's really great even for me cuz I think one of my biggest fears is like just I'm kind of a perfectionist by nature. So even just like trying new things with the possibility of failing or not being
Mm.
good at it, I don't even try it. Like that's a negative thing about me, right? But or my weakness. But I'm learning even so I have two children, one is 4 and one is 2. And with my own children, I'm like it's okay. Like just mess up. It's all right. Just do it. Just try it. And I think what you just said is just right on point because that's half the battle, just trying. And if you hate it, now you know. Yeah, so
That's
good.
exactly right. And everybody's going through it, right? Like you do not go through this alone. We've all been afraid, been unsure, been uncertain, been disappointed, been upset, right? Like we're all going through that. And
Mm-hmm.
right, like there are tough days, there are great days. It's a part of everyone's experience. So, right, like just know, if it's not working out for you, it didn't work out for a whole lot of us as well. And we're still figuring it out.
Yes, I love that. Thank you so much, Ellie. Would you be okay if someone had maybe questions about HR, them reaching out to you?
Oh, absolutely.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, guys, thank you so much for listening. You heard it. If you have any questions or any comments about today's episode, feel free to DM me through social media, or you can email me at podcastwigu@gmail.com. Thanks so much again, Ellie.
Thank you so much for having me. This is great.
Of course, I had a wonderful time. Until next time, guys. Bye.